You've probably heard of Lockheed Martin before, especially amongst those who have recently been protesting against sending weapons to Israel.
This is the moment a Lockheed Martin employee drove into a pro-Palestine blockade.
But what is Lockheed Martin, and even more importantly, what does Lockheed Martin represent? Lockheed Martin is the world's largest defense contractor in the global arms trade, and they receive the most funding from the US government in terms of military contracts. They provide training, logistics, and weapons to the US military, as well as militaries and militias across the globe. In 2024, the US government allocated $883.7 billion to national defense, which doesn't include supplemental spending, which would make that number even higher. At 14.2%, this leaves national defense as the fourth largest percentage of the federal budget, which is where our tax dollars go. Behind the Department of Health and Human Services at 28%, the Department of Treasury at 20.2%, and the Social Security Administration at 17.1%. That's a stark contrast between the funding allocated to the Department of Housing and Urban Development at 0.9%, or the Environmental Protection Agency at 0.2%, or even the Department of Education, which is also at 0.9%. 14.2%, nearly $900 billion of federal spending towards national defense. Now, what does this have to do with Lockheed Martin? Out of the entire national defense budget, around half of that goes directly towards military contracts with independent companies, the largest being Lockheed Martin. While much of Lockheed Martin's operations are funded by federal taxpayer money, that money doesn't really get redistributed back into the system. It does make a lot of wealthy people wealthier, though. This is the idea of the military-industrial complex, the bridge between capitalism and militarization, and how there is a relatively small group of people who reap huge benefits from war. In addition to fulfilling various military contracts, Lockheed Martin also spends billions of dollars in political lobbying, often advocating in favor of conflict. It's also not just Lockheed Martin benefiting from all of this. Anyone who owns a share of the Lockheed Martin stock piggybacks off of the profits that Lockheed Martin makes, making Lockheed Martin's success their success. And this is where we begin to understand whose interests are truly at play here. The top holders in Lockheed Martin's stock are all hedge funds, or international holding companies, with State Street, BlackRock, and Vanguard holdings resting at the top. A holding company or hedge fund is basically a company that doesn't manufacture anything, sell anything, and/or conduct any other business operations. It's a purely financial company, and they make all of their money from moving other people's money around in what's called the global stock market. At the top of the list, State Street currently owns around $16.8 billion in shares of Lockheed Martin stock, Vanguard with $9.9 billion, and BlackRock with $8.6 billion. So these holding companies invest into and profit off of other companies, but who are the ones who are investing into these holding companies? The list probably won't surprise you. Across all three of these holding companies, you'll find familiar faces, including Microsoft at the top, Apple, Amazon, Google, Tesla, Meta, and many more. This is a method that, whether intentional or unintentional, is used to consolidate wealth and power in the hands of a select few. We often talk about aristocracy in a historical context, but what is this other than a modern-day aristocracy? Ensuring that wealth and power is kept within a small, privileged class at the expense of the working class who makes it all happen, skewing the rules and the system in their favor. There are children who are born rich and die rich without having to work a single day in their life, while others are struggling to survive as they contribute to the accumulation of their wealth. It's believed that the average taxpayer contributed around $1,748 to private military contractors in 2023, with around $249 of that going towards Lockheed Martin. Defining the quote average taxpayer can be tricky though, especially since there are some billionaires who pay near to nothing in taxes due to elaborate tax evasion methods. Similar to Lockheed Martin actually, who is believed to have been awarded $45 billion in unclassified contracts by the federal government in 2022. That's federal taxpayer money with no receipt. Although aside from how our taxes partially fund Lockheed Martin and how others piggyback off of their profit, One of the saddest factors that we're witnessing in all of this is the complete and utter disregard for the lives of other human beings in this process of capitalizing wealth on the backs of others. Lockheed Martin also operates something called Lockheed Martin Ventures. We often wonder how the Israeli military has developed its technology and skill set up to this point. Lockheed Martin has a whole page dedicated to their history with Israel on their website, and most of Israel's military development can actually be attributed to contracts with Lockheed Martin. So how is this relevant to us? Whether it be domestic or international, it's the same group of people who are doing the influencing. Some other large military contractors include General Dynamics and Boeing. CodePink posted a brief analysis of these two on their Instagram page already, breaking down how they have contributed to the ongoing Israeli genocide, and I really recommend going to check it out. The wealth gap between the quote rich and the quote poor is increasing. While the richest 1% have been getting much richer, the poor have been getting poorer. Whether we're talking about the oppression of whole nations or the oppression of individuals living within a nation, the injustice is the same, as are the perpetrators. The richest 1% own almost half of the world's wealth, and this wealth inequality has seen a sharp increase in recent years, so it's actually been getting worse. It starts with awareness, and once we better understand, what can we do about it? There are many things that we could do, whether it be through artistic expression or applying a unique skill set to a unique situation. Although a form of political action that has been coming up a lot recently is that of boycotting. If there's one thing that the privileged, wealthy class values, it's their wealth, which is tied to their status. As soon as their wealth is threatened, that's when they begin to pay attention. Boycotts aren't always easy, although when they're successful, the level of impact is unmatched. A couple of examples of some successful boycotts are the Montgomery bus boycott, followed by the arrest of Rosa Parks during the American Civil Rights Movement. This boycott also didn't just spontaneously occur. It was methodically planned out before the action was taken, increasing its effectiveness and leading to its eventual success. And the anti-apartheid movement against the apartheid in South Africa, which was inspired by the boycott movement, centered around boycotting, and it worked. The thing about successful action is that the success is often downplayed by those in power to deter people from becoming aware of the fact that it actually works. Another action related to boycotting that, while slightly riskier, also has proven to be successful is the act of organizing in the workplace, which is also tied to disrupting the economic flow of profit towards the 1%, or the quote wealthy privileged class. This quote privileged class also benefits from predictability. In fact, the whole entire stock market is based on predictability. So the more unpredictable an action is, the greater chance of impact it will have. And the more they underestimate us, the better. What's most important is that we have clear and reasonable demands, know who our target is, be strategic and intentional, and obviously take the initiative. Remember, it is us who makes up the working class and makes this all happen. So whether it be Apple and Tesla exploiting child labor in the DRC, Google developing software and technology for leaders of oppressive governments, Meta censoring the speech of those advocating for an end to genocide, and honestly, the list can go on. Although, as those who make up the majority, if we unite and organize, change on any level is possible.